Welcome to the Immigrantinlaw channel. Today we are going to talk about something that is not written about in the questionnaires and not mentioned in the instructions. The psychology of an immigrant. How does a person feel when she finds herself in a new country? How to survive culture shock and adapt to life in an unfamiliar society. If you are preparing to move or have just arrived, this video is for you. Culture shock is not just a fashionable expression, but a real psychological phenomenon that affects everyone who moves to another country, especially if it is a long-term immigration rather than a tourist trip. At first glance, it may seem that adaptation is a matter of practice. Learn the language, find a place to live, get a job. But the reality is much deeper than that. Your environment changes in literally everything. People smile differently. They respond to greetings differently. People do not behave the way they do at home in the store. The level of personal space, the manner of communication, even the intonation is different. If in the first few days you feel excitement, delight, anticipation, this is the so-called honeymoon phase. Everything seems bright, unusual, almost fabulous. But soon comes the second phase, the collision with reality. This is where culture shock begins in its full manifestation. You feel like an outsider, ignorance of the language, unfamiliar bureaucratic procedures, imperceptible but constant little things begin to irritate you. Many people describe this state as a loss of footing. What seems simple and understandable in the home country here requires effort. Even ordering coffee can be stressful. Whether you pronounced it correctly, whether you sounded rude, whether everything was understood. It's not about the coffee, it's about the fact that your internal compass is not yet tuned to the new culture. Psychologists identify several stages of culture shock. Honeymoon, the first few days or weeks when everything seems interesting and exciting. Frustration, when you start to notice that many things are unclear, inconvenient, and not our way. Adaptation is a period when you learn to cope with difficulties. Acceptance, when a new culture becomes part of your life. It is important to understand, culture shock does not say that there is something wrong with you. It says that you are a living person and your brain is trying to adapt to new conditions. The sooner you realize this, the easier it will be to go through the next stages. And most importantly, you are not alone in this process. Culture shock does not always manifest itself abruptly. More often than not, it creeps up stealthily. Everything seems to be going according to plan. You are already in a new country. The documents have been drawn up. Accommodation has been found. But something is wrong inside. Constant anxiety, irritation, apathy, and you don't immediately associate it with the move. Here are the most common signs of culture shock. Emotional exhaustion. You feel tired, even if you are not physically overloaded. Every day is like a small struggle with language, with the system, with the unfamiliar logic of others. The brain works in a high-stress mode, and at some point, it simply burns out. Irritation and aggression. The most innocuous things can irritate you. A stranger's smile, a queue in a store, the slowness of a cashier, the volume of conversations. You realize that these are small things, but inside you are boiling. This is a signal. You are in a state of hypersensitivity, because your psyche has not yet adapted to it. Social isolation. Even if you live in a big city and you are surrounded by people, there can be a feeling of complete detachment. Language, mentality, jokes, even intonation, everything is different. It seems that you can't be your own and you can't speak freely with anyone. Nostalgia and idealization of the homeland. There may be a strong, almost painful desire to return home. Memories of native food, familiar streets, familiar language become compulsive. Even what used to be annoying in the native country is now perceived as comfort and stability. Self-doubt. It feels like you have become stupider. In fact, you just don't have the cultural code yet. This affects your confidence. You start to think that there is something wrong with you, that you can't cope, that you don't fit in. Psychosomatics. Sometimes it all goes physical. Headaches, stomach problems, insomnia, panic attacks. The body, as well as the psyche, is experiencing the stress of change. These manifestations can be expressed in different degrees, from mild irritation to prolonged depression. Someone passes this stage in a month, someone needs 6 months or more. The main thing is not to blame yourself. You are not weak. You are in the process of readjusting, and that takes time. Your brain, your nervous system, your perception, everything is learning to live in a new way, and this is the beginning of adaptation. You're moving forward, even if it feels like you're standing still right now. Why do some immigrants adapt quickly, while others can't get out of anxiety and confusion for months? It's all about what factors contribute to culture shock. Knowing them will help you to be at least partially prepared and reduce the severity of the reaction. Contrast between cultures. The more different the new country is from the one you grew up in, the higher the risk of a cultural cliff. Everywhere has its own rules, both unspoken and formal. Even just smiling at a passerby is considered normal in some countries and something strange in others. Language barrier. This is one of the key factors. When you can't express yourself or don't understand what is going on around you, there is a constant feeling of helplessness. Even simple everyday situations are a challenge. And if you add to that the fear of doing something wrong, you just want to shut yourself away and not go anywhere. Loneliness. The lack of acquaintances, friends, family around makes the situation much worse. Support is not a luxury, it is a necessary resource. Even one person you can talk to in your native language can give you a sense of stability and reduce stress stress levels. Domestic instability. If you don't have permanent housing, are unsure of your legal status, don't fully understand the local system, you're in a state of chronic anxiety. And in such a situation, adaptation slows down. The psyche simply does not have enough resources to get used to the cultural peculiarities because you are busy surviving. Negative first experience. Trouble in the first weeks, rudeness, fraud, refusal at the authorities can leave a long trail. After that, a person begins to see the new society through a prism of distrust. Everything seems hostile and unsafe. Expectations versus reality. If you moved with inflated expectations, especially under the influence of advertising, other people's stories or social media, facing reality can be a shock. Bureaucracy, domestic difficulties, and cultural differences are all seen as frustrations rather than a natural part of the journey. All of this doesn't mean you're doomed to a tough adjustment, but it is important to be aware of the risks so that you can be prepared for them. If you realize in advance that, for example, language is your weak point, you can start practicing it before you move. Remember, adaptation is not a question of strength of character, but of conditions, and you have the right to create an environment in which it will be easier for yourself. When you find yourself in a state of culture shock, the most important thing is not to expect it to go away. It can last for months, and for some people it can turn into chronic dissatisfaction or even depression. To prevent this from happening, it is important not just to tolerate, but to act consciously. Here are practical steps that really help. Admit that you're having a hard time. It seems obvious, but many people, instead of recognizing the stress, start blaming themselves. I wanted to leave, so I'm weak. This is a path to a dead end. Say to yourself, yes, it's hard for me. It's normal. It will pass. That's the first step to recovery. Create a stable routine. Culture shock is often accompanied by a sense of chaos. Everything is new. Everything is unfamiliar. That is why it is so important to create islands of predictability. Eating breakfast at a certain time, walking the same route, shopping weekly at the same store. These are small things, but they bring back a sense of control. Minimize the overload. Moving is a huge stressor. Don't take on too much at once. You don't have to try to adapt perfectly in the first few weeks. Give yourself permission to take things slowly. Today, go to the pharmacy. Tomorrow, learn 10 new words. And that's progress. Learn the language at your own pace, but regularly. You should not set the goal of speaking in a month. It is better to devote at least 15-30 minutes a day to the language on a regular basis. Watch simple videos, listen to the radio in the background, repeat phrases. Even elementary knowledge reduces anxiety. You are no longer completely dependent on others. Look for areas of common interest with people. Even if you are an introvert, at least minimal socializing helps to break the isolation. Find expatriate groups, language clubs, online communities, local events. Participate, even passively. It will help you feel that you are not alone. Record your feelings. A diary, notes in your phone, audio messages to yourself, whatever the format. Record how you feel, what surprises you, what annoys you. This reduces the level of inner tension and helps you see your way. In a couple of months, you'll be surprised at how much you've already overcome. Stay in touch with your family, but don't concentrate on the past. Regular calls and correspondence are supportive, but be careful. If you are constantly living with thoughts of returning and comparing everything with your home country, adaptation is slowed down. Try to be here and now. Look for the advantages of your new surroundings, even if they are not many yet. Drain the information. At first, you want to listen and read everything. How to live in this country, what mistakes not to make, what other immigrants say. But not all information is constructive. Avoid chat rooms and forums where everything boils down to complaints and panic. Attitude matters. Take care of your body. It affects your psyche. Physical activity, sleep patterns, normal nutrition, trivial things, but they greatly affect the adaptation. Even a simple walk, a contrast shower, or morning exercise can bring back energy. Each of these steps individually may seem insignificant, but collectively, they work. Culture shock doesn't disappear overnight, but you can mitigate it and learn to live in a new country through adjustment rather than struggle. And the sooner you start supporting yourself, the sooner the moment will come when you will feel, I am in my place. It is important to understand, culture shock is natural, but if you feel that your inner tension is not easing, but on the contrary, increasing, you should stop and honestly ask yourself, am I still adapting or am I already burning out? These are the signals that indicate that the situation requires attention and possibly professional support as well. Chronic fatigue and apathy. You can't get out of bed, you can't even do simple things. Everything causes resistance. You don't want to do anything, you avoid socializing and doing things. This is not laziness, but a symptom of emotional exhaustion. Regular panic attacks. If you are often scared for no obvious reason, if you have anxiety attacks, heart palpitations, sweating, a feeling of something is going to happen. These are not just worries, but anxiety reactions worth working with. Severe irritability or aggression. If you're increasingly snapping at loved ones, can't cope with your emotions, flare up over little things, it could be a sign of internal overload. This is how the psyche signals there are not enough resources. Thoughts of coming home as the only way out. If you think every day, Why did I even come here? I should have stayed. Everything was a mistake. Do not hurry to pack your bags. More often than not, this does not indicate a real need to leave, but a strong emotional exhaustion. In such a state, it is better not to make important decisions. Physical symptoms with no obvious cause, insomnia, aches and pains, poor appetite, digestive problems, and blood pressure spikes can all be not only a medical, but also a psychosomatic response to stress. If you notice one or more of these signs in yourself, it's not a reason to be afraid or ashamed. It's a reason to take care of yourself. Seeing a specialist doesn't mean you can't handle it. It means that you want to go through the journey of adjustment in good health and with support. You may feel like you're in foreign territory right now. Everything is unfamiliar, everything is given with effort, every day is like a small feat. But believe me, it's not forever. Adaptation is not a single moment when suddenly it becomes easy. It is a gradual process. It may not be noticeable, but it's happening. You learn. You get used to it. First, you translate every phrase in your head. Then you pick up on the intonation. First, you look for like-home foods. Then you start discovering new flavors. First, you're afraid to call local services. Then you help others who've just arrived. And at some point, there's a moment of silence. You go outside and you don't feel the tension anymore. You walk into a store and you don't think through every word. You laugh at a joke in the local language and realize that you are part of a new space. Yes, everything changes. Yes, some things remain in the past, but in its place comes a new one. Not worse, just different. Your path is unique. You won't be like everyone else. And that's a good thing, because you will be the one to write your own story of adaptation. If you're watching this video and you're feeling like it's hard right now, know this. You're not alone. You are not weak. You don't not fit in. You are just a person learning to live in a new world. And you will definitely make it through. If you are at the stage of moving or have already faced difficulties, do not stay with it alone. Subscribe to our channel. We share not only legal information, but also human support. And if you are thinking about immigration, leave a request for a free consultation with Immigrantinlaw lawyers. We will choose the best relocation strategy for you, prepare all the necessary documents, explain in detail the nuances of the law, and answer all your questions. Want to learn more or start the process today? Contact us. All contacts are listed in the description below this video. We are here to help you take a confident step towards a new life. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and ask your questions in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. And remember, culture shock is temporary. Your new life is forever. Discover a world of opportunities with Immigrant in Law.